You're listening to the Generational Wealth Through Commercial Real Estate podcast. Your host, Will Smith, is a former NFL player that found his passion in commercial real estate. Every week, you will learn from industry experts everything you need to know to get started investing in commercial real estate to build generational wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to the Generational Wealth Through Commercial Real Estate show. Got a really special guest lined up for you today. But before we get into the show, if you're watching this for the first time, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you haven't left a review, go ahead and leave me a 5-star review now. This is how I'm able to bring on rockstar guests like I have today. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get to today's guest. Adam Adams, also known as AAA in the real estate community, has educated thousands of investors throughout his real estate conferences, his radio and podcast interview, and his coaching program. He also has a thriving meetup group. Adam also hosts the Creative Real Estate Podcast, a podcast listened to around the world with hundreds of thousands of downloads. And today, Adam is partnered in 7 multifamily syndications with approximately 1,400 doors valued at over $100 million. Adam, thanks for coming on the show, man.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
Absolutely, man. So obviously that was a really fast run through of what you're doing right now. So tell us a little bit more about who you are, man, and how you got your start.
Absolutely. So I am a father of 2, and I've been a father for about approximately 10 years or so, and 2 young boys, they make me super happy. But years and years and years before that happened, I got invested in real estate because my stepdad said I had to do this. He basically made me because he bought me a piece of real estate, and then his accountant gave this BS answer that I had to pay for the gift. So he gave me this gift for Christmas, and then all of a sudden he goes, Hey, Adam, I'm going to have you pay me something for that. And I was like, Dad, how much? And he goes, at least $100. And I was like, I'm a college student. How am I going to pay $100? Right. I can barely pay for books and food and my rent and my new car payment. And so anyway, I ended up paying for it. And a couple years later, I sold that piece of land for a lot more than I had ever put into it. And it was kind of exciting because it was more money than I had ever seen in 1 year. And I just was like blown away at this chunk of cash, 5 figures in the bank for the first time as a college student. Wow. And some of my friends, they were not even making that amount of money per year. And I just made it without doing anything. Yep. And I was going to school for music education. I wanted to be a teacher. And I said to myself, this is more money than I'll make in a whole year of being a teacher. Right. And so randomly enough, even though teaching seemed to be my passion, it's what I wanted, music was my passion, wanted to be a junior high band director, I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to be a real estate investor. This seems like the easy life. Now I'll fast forward to today. What is it? 13 years later. Yep. My kids are a little bit older. I've been investing for 15 years, and I found that real estate isn't quite as easy as I expected. It's very beneficial. There's a lot to it. But I'll tell you the difference between that piece of land versus what I do now. You mentioned that I'm partnered in $100 million of real estate. In this $100 million of real estate, I get passive residual income, whereas every month my wealth gets bigger and everything else gets bigger. But that piece of land, even though it did some really cool stuff for me as a college student, every year I had to pay a tax bill. While I was holding it, the taxes all of a sudden came, and it didn't cash flow. It was taking money from my pocket. Right. So if I stopped working, I would have gone bankrupt. And now I don't have to work. And I mean, it sounds conceited. It sounds arrogant. I don't mean it that way. I'm so grateful to be in a position where if I took a couple of years and just traveled the country, traveled the world, for some reason, I'd still be able to pay all my bills through all the passive income. So
that's pretty awesome, man. And that's where a lot of people are trying to get to, you know. And the Rich Dad Poor Dad, man, that's my favorite book. That's what got me started on this journey. And it talks about your assets paying for your liabilities. And it looks like you figured that out.
Yeah. Well, I figured it out the hard way because I remember after I had to pay my dad a little bit, just a few months later, the county sent me some mail, and I was like, "That's so cool! This is a piece of America that I own, and I'm getting something from the county. What's in here?" And all of a sudden, they said I owed a few $100, and I was like, no, Dad, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are they making me pay money? And he's like, Dad, are you kidding, Adam? Like, this is your tax bill. And I was like, okay, well, do I have to pay it? And he just rolled his eyes. He's like, of course you have to pay it. I was like, oh, gosh, the gift that keeps on taking. So,
right.
Anyway.
That's funny. So you're in multifamily now, and you're doing syndications. So how did you go from that first piece of land to being in the syndication game?
Well, you mentioned that you read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it's one of your favorite books, and that's actually what I did. My stepdad, growing up, he kept saying to me all the time, he's like, Adam, you got to read this book. Adam, you got to play this game with me. It's called Cash Flow. And I was like, sounds awesome, Dad. Let's play. And he's like, yeah, you're going to learn so much about money. And I'm like, I don't want to play that. I don't want to read that. And so like I was just repelling these things. I repelled them. But in 2007, when I sold that land and made all this money without having to do work, I thought to myself, man, maybe I should try to give that book a try. So I picked it up and I started reading it. I said, I'll at least read the first 2 chapters. And that's all I committed to. I was like, I'll read the first 2 chapters. And, if I don't like it, I'll stop. And if I do like it, I'll read the 3rd chapter and we'll just keep going.
Yep.
What was interesting is that got me really into real estate, and I wanted to do it so bad, and I was like, now I've got to start my own company. So in 2007, I started a handyman company. It was the cheapest company that I could start right off the bat. It was something that I had experience with. My stepdad, growing up, we owned a bunch of different real estate. He had self-storage units that I would snowplow. He had duplexes, fourplexes, single family, all sorts of random different things. Yep. I remember collecting rent when I was like 9 years old, and I finally was seeing the big picture, why he did all of this. And I thought to myself, okay, I've got to do everything that Robert Kiyosaki says. So I got like 13 employees in my handyman company. I was netting decent amount of money for how young I was, and I was still in college in 2007. I was about to graduate 1 year later, but what I ended up doing is finding out that Robert Kiyosaki didn't find his wealth in land or single family, and nobody ever knows that. Like most people just assume, and so did I. But when I was reading the book, I started studying his life. And so I said, okay, so it's got to be multifamily. So I actually literally skipped. I never bought a single family. So what I did is in 2007, I started managing apartment communities. I managed this 18 unit that I lived there. I managed a fourplex and also 1 condo. So 23 units that I was the property manager of. I was also the handyman of, and I was learning all sorts of stuff. I started my handyman company, and I was like, the only reason I'm doing all this is so that I can be massively wealthy one day. I need to know how to do the ins and outs. So in 2007, that's what I was doing. 2008, something remarkable happened. Something even more remarkable than buying a piece of land for $100 and selling it for $10,000+, And so what I did is I as this 18-plex, the guy who owned it ended up selling it. and he bought it for $1,050,000 and he sold it for $2 million. And I remember thinking, man, this guy just put $1 million in his pocket,
Right.
leveraging the single best asset anyone can leverage, which is OPT.
Yep.
Other people's time. So this guy was so smart. He had me do all of the grunt work at $10-12 an hour, maybe
Yep.
$12.50. And at the end of 1 year, he made $1 million, and I made like a couple thousand. I made like a couple thousand work.
Right.
And I was like, how did this guy just make $1 million off of my work? And I was hooked. I bought my first triplex. I house hacked, or I guess apartment hacked, a multi-unit.
Yep.
That I purchased with my handyman company. Was so brand new that I was unable to qualify for a loan in 2008. Literally, if I would have just bought that property 4 weeks earlier,
Yes.
and that's it, just 4 weeks before, I could have just been able to breathe or have a heartbeat, and they would have given me 120%. But this was at the end of 2008 in October, and as I was going to closing, and they no longer allowed stated loans. They were aggressive, and they were like, they learned their lesson from 2005, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
So at the end of 2008, I bought this property, but I couldn't get a loan from a bank. So I ended up getting a loan from a private individual that I was a handyman for. And so anyway, I bought that triplex, and the rest is history.
Nice, man. That's pretty incredible story, man. From being on the management side of it, you're managing this property, and you're working hard at it, and you're doing all the grunt work. And this owner took it and sold it a year later after you started managing it, and made $1 million. And that was a light bulb moment for you that said, man, multifamily is on the investing side is where it's at. So that's pretty incredible, man. So you actually raised money for somebody to buy the deal.
Yeah, well, it's funny that I didn't know what it was called back then. I mean, there was no coaching programs. I don't even know if there was podcasts in 2007. But yeah, what I ended up doing is I found out that I went bank to bank to bank, and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I just kept going to, okay, what kind of loan should I get? Okay, so I can't get an FHA because I missed this. Okay, so what about this? What about this? What about this? How much do I have to put down? And I just could not get the loan as many places as I went. And I think that determination is important. I think that the listener needs to take that away, that regardless of what you have, what are your pros, what are your cons,
right?
If you can just do that one thing and just never quit, you will win. You will win. I don't care what's against you. You will win if you just find a way around. And anyway, so I reached out to this guy that he knew that I wanted to get into apartments. He knew that I loved real estate. He knew that I was brand new. He knew my the quality of work that I did when I was a handyman doing little construction jobs here and there for him, because he was one of my clients. I worked for him. I worked on 2 of his houses, actually. He lived in California, but he owned these houses in Utah where I was growing up. And I kept doing work for him, and I kept asking him, that's so cool that you do this. How long have you been doing this? Tell me how to do this. And I've done this much property management, and I really want to get into it. And one day I just said, hey, you said you have some money sitting in the bank. Like, would you ever want to partner on this? And he goes, yeah, I'd partner. And so what ended up happening is he purchased the thing complete with cash. Like he had a little over $1 million in the bank, which like now I meet so many people that do, because we have a lot of passive investors that do have that. Yeah. But back then I was like $1 million in the bank. Anyways, I just asked him, would you ever want to partner? So what he did is he purchased the property for around $375,000 cash. It was just a triplex.
Yeah.
And then he became the bank. And what he did is he wrote a note. He became a note holder, and I became the owner. And I paid him a mortgage, and I did all the work, I collected all the rent, and I paid the mortgage to him.
Yep.
And what I ended up doing is I was paying rent to my company.
Yep.
So, because I wanted the cap rate to look big and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah, that was kind of how I closed that first property back in 2008. A lot of fun, learned a lot of lessons. I'll tell you one thing that's important. You can ask questions about it if you like to, but I'll tell you, Willie, the main thing is I didn't do everything right on that property. Even though I managed property for a year, 3 different properties, managed 23 different units.
Yep.
Even though I had a year's experience managing 23 units, I made at least 3 mistakes on my first triplex that did cost me time and money. And ultimately in 2011, I ended up losing that property because of the crash and how I mismanaged the property. But a lot of good stories there in that triplex.
Absolutely, man. And the biggest takeaway for the listeners there is, number one, who cares if somebody tells you no? Adam kept hearing no, but he kept, pushing his way, and through perseverance, he found a way to get a deal done. So, that's critical, man. Just take action. Massive action is going to give you an opportunity to create some success. So that's awesome, man. To hear that story. So it's 2011, and now you're looking for your next deal, next opportunity. So where did you go from there?
In fact, I wasn't looking for a deal or an opportunity in 2011. I was embarrassed. I lost my property. I literally, the owner, Tom, the note holder, excuse me, Tom, he flew out from California back to Utah, and we went to the title company, and I signed over a deed in lieu of foreclosure. I told him I wasn't going to be able to pay this month. And he's like, that's not a problem. I'll take over the property. Let me just fly out, and you just need to sign this piece of paper. Yeah. And I was like, okay. Well, I was embarrassed. Right then at that time is when I was having my children, and so actually, I had a stepson who had just turned 3 in 2011, and we were pregnant with my youngest, and I was just like, man, I don't want to go through that again. I don't want my kids to, see all of these issues. I don't want to ever lose money again. I don't want to be embarrassed. I mismanaged my property. I let it go, and it was hard. And so when you say you were looking for your next opportunity, I wasn't. I was looking for, how can I make my life as simple as possible? So I actually took a few years off from 2011 all the way to 2015, which is when my stepdad flew out to Denver, and he was like, Adam, you got to get back into real estate. And I was like, I don't know. And so we started, we went to real estate conventions, and he was thinking about partnering with me. And then somebody else wanted to partner with me because I had a little bit of experience, good and bad. Right. Through the years. And so this guy just became the money. He just basically said, I like what you're doing. Would you want to do tax deed acquisitions with me? That wasn't until 2015. And we doubled our money a few times doing tax deeds. And I was kind of the brains and again, OPT, this other guy. It wasn't Tom anymore. Now it was Steve, and Steve wanted to leverage his money and my time. And so we just doubled our money. Then tax deeds started getting a little bit harder. And I said, all right, I'm ready to get into apartments again. So 2016, we took an education with one of the bigger multifamily education companies out there. Yeah. And we just started, trying to learn how to do a syndication. Something called syndication, which I know a lot of your listeners know, but there's probably a listener that's on today that just hadn't heard of the word syndication. And so I'll just mention what it means is I wanted to be an operator of apartments. I wanted to take all the good and bad that I had learned over the years. at this time, I owned some fourplexes, fiveplexes, threeplexes, a few single families around the country, and I just thought to myself, I'm ready. I'm ready to raise OPM. I'm ready to raise OPM and help people. So we did that, and we learned how to operate. And we still are learning today. A few years later, we're learning every single day. I mean, I was talking to my attorney yesterday on a deal that we have been working on, and I'm still learning cool stuff. But anyway, that's kind of what brought me into it. And then we syndicated our first deal. I think it was 2017. We closed on two properties that year, 2 or 3 properties the next year, and 1 property in 2019. And then we haven't closed anything else in 2019, or we're almost at the end of 2020. I don't think we're going to close on anything. We're not really underwriting anything. We're just trying to manage the assets that we have through the corona virus and the pandemic and everything else that's happening in the end of 2020.
Right. So let's talk about number one, how are your groups finding your deals right now? How are you getting deal flow? Because that's important to start living off other people's money. Like how are you doing that?
I love the question. Okay, so I think that there is a process to finding deals, and I think that process is really important. Right now, as we record this, my team has decided not to be looking for deals for a little bit. We're just going to manage what we have, because we have a lot of apartments that we're operating, we're managing, we're invested in. So it's just most important for us to keep our eye on that ball. So we're not personally looking for deals. We feel like maybe we don't know if the economy is going to go down, if it's going to go even, if it's going to go up. Yeah. And we don't want to buy if the economy might go down. We just want to manage our assets appropriately. But here's the process of finding deals that I think nobody else talks about. Yeah. And that's a big issue, because we go to I hear a lot of people say, you got to fake it till you make it. I disagree with it. I hear a lot of people say, you just got to be completely honest and you can tell everybody that you're brand new. I also disagree with that. Yeah. I found some type of hybrid in the middle, where if you do this and you haven't yet closed a deal, by the way, Willie, once you've closed deals, for the listener, once they've closed on a few of these, you're going to get them. Right. They're just going to come because people know you close.
Right.
But before that, there's a very specific process. The most important 2 things that you need before you close a deal is money and property management. The most important 3 things are money, property management, and a team. Okay, yeah. People on your team. So the question is, how do you get these 3 things? How do you make sure that you have these 3 things so that when you are actually going to close on deals, you're able to do it without having the broker? Usually the broker controls the deals.
Yep.
They think about a dog or a bee. What do dogs and bees do the best? They smell fear. They know that you are sweating bullets. They know that you don't want to get stung.
Right.
And when they can sniff this out and understand that you've never done anything, regardless of you faking it till you making it, or regardless of you just being completely vulnerable and honest on these 2 ends of the spectrum, they're just not going to deal with you. The broker who controls all the deals just will not give you the deals. So how do you solve the problem? And so here's my process. Once you get educated, once you understand what you're doing and you feel like you're ready, the next step is you've got to start knowing exactly where you're going to invest. And so you're step 1, education. Step 2, selecting a market. And a lot of people miss this. A lot of people say, well, I don't need to learn this. I don't need to get educated, right? They think, like, I'm just going to skip that step and I'm going to learn, hard knocks. I'm going to learn, by just doing, and that's how I'm going to pay for my education. Is I'm just going to mess up and lose millions of dollars, and that's how I'm going to pay for my education.
Right.
I just think that's so ridiculously stupid. Get educated, and then select a market. Again, people forget this all the time. Select a market, because what they want to do is they're thinking like, I just want to find any deal. I don't care where it is. And then once I have the deal, then I'll look at the market. And I think that's just dumb. I think you need to figure out where you want to invest. Now you're educated, you know exactly where you want to be. The next thing is one of the three things that I was talking about before. Build your team.
Yep.
You start to understand who you want to partner with. Here's what you need on your team. You need to start with somebody with experience, somebody with net worth, and somebody with liquidity. You got to start finding these people, and sometimes that just becomes a sponsor. People call it a sponsor.
Yep.
This basically means somebody who's been there and done that before, and they can be on your team. And so what I like to do is I want you, the listener, who's never closed a deal and they're trying to learn how to find deals, they're going to take this process as they're building the team. They're going to find somebody who's been there and done that. Because the last thing you want is the blind leading the blind.
Right.
Because you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. They didn't get educated. They haven't selected a market, and they don't have a team that they don't have a real team. They have a blind leading the blind team. And remember, if you have the blind leading the blind, you are not going to get anywhere. You need somebody to tell you what to do.
That's
so
right.
you know the market. You pick the team that's going to be in that market. Then again, you need two things still. You've got the team. You still need two things. What is it? You need money and you need property management.
Right.
So here's the exact right process. So if you're looking for property management, here's what you do. You call brokers. You call real estate brokers. You call commercial real estate brokers. But you don't talk to those brokers about a deal. You're not even there yet. You're still missing the three.
Right.
So you're talking to the broker, and all you say is, I'm new to this area, and I just need you to give me a referral of the top one or two property management companies in this MSA. That's basically the city.
Right.
And so that's your process. Call the broker, ask for referrals to the property management company. Now you start vetting property management companies. You don't have anything else except for your team set up.
Yep.
You're vetting property management companies. You're calling lots of property management companies. Then you select one. You know who you're going to have. The worst thing you could ever do is purchase a property and just randomly keep the property management company in.
Yeah.
You want your own property management company that you spend a lot of time vetting. You vet them with brokers. So this is interesting how this works. You're educated, you select a market, you build your team, then you get the property management company. Remember, that's by calling brokers and not talking about deals, just talking about the best property management companies. And then what you do is you start raising money. You've got your team, you know the property management company that's going to do it, you know the market, you're educated, and now you start going around and finding passive investors. You start branding yourself, you start having conversations, you start putting out content, and you start allowing people to know that you have these opportunities or you're going to have these opportunities, and you talk to them about the education, the market, the team, and the property management company.
Yep.
So now the money feels safe. Once you've raised, and this is the metric that I like, once you've raised twice as much as the 30% down payment needed for one deal. Once you have that in commitments, it's time to finally call the broker. So you've got the deal, you've got the team, the market, and the money, and now you call the brokers. You're experienced enough that you sound credible. You've gone through all of this, and the broker's going to ask you three major things. Who on your team has done this before? who's going to be managing the property,
Yep.
and do you have the money to close? If you say yes, I've got the answer to those 3 questions,
Right.
they no longer are smelling fear like those bees. They're actually going to say, all right, I'll give you some property so that you can start underwriting.
Yep.
I'll start actually sending you actual deals and not just roll my eyes when you call.
Right.
That's how you solve the process of getting deals that literally nobody else talked about. Again, education, select a market, find your team, the property management company, and then the money. Now you can call the brokers.
Yeah. Well, you know what, man? I got to tell you, hands down, that has been the best explanation on how to get deal flow that I've heard on this show. So hats off to you for that, man.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
For sure, man. All right. So, well, we've already talked about the biggest challenge then is getting the brokers to take you serious, and you just answered that on, all of those steps you just mentioned. So that's key. Now, just talk for a quick second here, man. Talk about underwriting a deal. What are some red flags that people should look for when they underwriting? The broker sending them deals. So, what should they be looking for to avoid?
For sure. I'll try to have an answer to that benefits passive investors as well as operating partners. Yep. So if there is somebody who's passive and they're wanting to invest with you, Willie, or someone else who comes on the show, I want them to kind of understand the big red flags that they ought to be looking at. And some of the things with underwriting a deal that I think are the biggest red flags that I see people missing all the time. There's this thing, it's called reversion cap rate. Okay, it's called reversion cap rate. And when you have this thing, basically the better way to say this is it's your cap rate at exit, it's your sell price, for lack of a better term. And so basically what they're saying is there are some people that they see the good in everything. And a lot of operators are like this. We are more entrepreneurial. When we take the personality test, we are okay with risk. We're the type of people that will go ready, fire, aim. Yeah. Right? So that happens with operators, and passive investors need to understand that there's some operators out there that don't operate like the passive investors, because for the most part, passive investors are so flippin' smart that they're leveraging OPT.
Right.
But they neglect to realize that some of the people that they're leveraging the time aren't qualified, or they're not really looking at it the way they would. Right. And so here's the thing. If you have somebody saying, by somebody, I mean, if you have an operator showing you a deal and there's a reversion cap rate or the selling cap rate where they're pretending, or where they're not pretending, how about I say where they are anticipating that they will sell that property, let's just say at a 6 cap.
Yep.
And let's just pretend as though they're buying it at a 7.5 cap.
Right.
Okay, they're buying it at a 7.5 cap. They're like, oh, we got a great deal because this is a 7 cap area and we got a 7.5 cap. Basically, that means they got it at a discount. Right. They could have paid $2 million for it, but it was worth $2.5 million, for instance.
Right.
And then they're like entrepreneurial, or they see the good in everything, and they expect that they can turn anything into gold, and they're like, oh, we're going to sell this at a 6 cap.
Yeah.
And but like they're not going to get those buyers. Right. They're not going to find that type of person in this market.
Right.
The market might be too small. The market might be XYZ. Yep. And you're the passive investor and you see this reversion cap rate at a 6 cap, and all of a sudden they bought it at $2 million. They thought it was worth $2.5 million, and they're saying they're going to sell it at $3 million or $4 million.
Right.
And you look at this and the numbers look good. The numbers look really, really good when you have an exit cap rate that low. Yep. Because it's inversely correlated, right? It means a high price. And all of a sudden you think, oh my gosh, I could triple my money in 2 years. I'm going to invest with this guy. Right. And the problem is they didn't really look at the underwriting. So with underwriting, if you're the operator, I want you to have conservative exit cap rates. And if you are the passive investor, I want you to be able to be educated to understand if that cap rate is truly attainable. Okay, that's the first one, reversion cap rate. The second one I want to say is on part of the pro forma, this is, and the anticipated what you'll do, the pro forma is if you're saying that you're going to, for instance, raise rents 15% in year one. I see this all the time. We passed on a deal that was crappy. We literally were like, no way, can't do anything with that deal. So we passed. And then we got a deal that was actually good, and we were being conservative. But the passive investors, they saw somebody else go and get that crappy deal.
Yeah.
But on the crappy deal, we said we wouldn't be able to increase the rent within the first year overall because we're going to have to kick some people out. There's going to be we're going to be putting money into the property, and when we bring people in, we might have to pay the property management company a month of rent for a placement fee, right? And so we anticipated all of this, which meant that we weren't going to be able to, even though rents were raising in that first year, we wouldn't collect the full amount. So we said, we're not going to be able to technically raise rents in the first year, and we looked at the second year, and we wanted to be so conservative so that if we bought that property, we would have done really, really great. But if the property was bad and somebody else was buying it and they said they were going to raise rents 15% in the first year. They had this massive pro forma trying to show everybody how things were, and they tried to say that they were going to keep increasing rents by 2 to 3% each year, and they were like, by conservative, it's 2%. Man, if we would have bought that property, rents have gone down this year. Like, rents have gone down, and so whoever passively invested in that deal, they did close it.
Yep.
We're still watching it now.
Right.
They're going to lose a crazy amount of money because the pro forma was inaccurate. They said that they could do something which they never should have been able to. They never should have been willing to say out loud. Right. Even if they wanted to do it, they shouldn't have ever put it in the pro forma.
Right.
The third thing that I want to share that can get missed in underwriting is the major big ticket items. There's a lot of them. Roof, foundation, drainage. People forget about drainage all the time.
Right.
Everything else looks good. They've got a good roof. The foundation looks wonderful. The boiler and chiller, if you even know what that is, the boiler and the chiller, they're in good shape. Right. I don't need to replace that. Like the kitchens all look already upgraded, but to our sadness, you've got this drainage that comes toward the property.
Yeah.
And nobody thinks to look at that. And all of a sudden, that means mold, that means flooding, that means XYZ. Yeah. And you're like, oh, no big deal. All we have to do is just move some dirt. It sounds easy.
Yeah.
But it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars just to move the drainage from the property to away from the property. And that gets missed all the time. So you're a passive investor and you're looking at somebody who's giving you a deal. Go to the property. Look at pictures of the property. Have somebody survey the property so you can see if it's draining away from the property, because there's so much damage that can happen if this has not happened. So those are three major ones that I think get missed.
Absolutely. Those are really, really good points there. Really good points. And I'm pretty sure some people writing some notes down on that one.
Good.
Like you said, people don't think about it. All right, man. So let's talk about the capital raising side for the operators, the aspiring operators, people that want to raise money for deals. Some tips, tricks on how to attract investors and then how to talk to them.
Perfect. So I would say now we're talking about raising money. The first thing to note is when I talked about educating yourself, selecting a market, building a team, finding a property manager, and having the money ready to go before you look for a deal. That's something that most people don't think of. They think I need to find the deal and the money will come. They think once I find the deal, then I raise money. They think, why would I raise money if I didn't even have a deal yet? That's embarrassing. That's awkward. They feel weird about asking for money. They haven't even looked at a deal. They haven't even called the broker yet.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that I want to share is think of it like in the way of the process. Think of it as ready, aim, fire. Okay. Yeah. You're getting your shiz together. You're collecting everything that you need.
Right.
You're getting prepared so that you can even close, so that you can even talk to brokers. So that's one thing that I want to be important. Before you start raising money, educated, know the market that you're going to be in, have the team ready to go, have the property management company ready to go. Now you start raising money. And once you get there, there's 3 major phases to raising capital. So this would be a great thing to write down. 3 major phases. The first phase is the branding phase.
Yeah.
Getting in front of investors so that they can get on your list. People neglect this first phase. They think that they don't have to brand themselves. They think that they just want to wait for a deal, and they just totally neglect it.
Yeah.
They got to do what you're doing. You've got a podcast. You've got a thought leadership platform.
Yeah.
You're posting on social media.
Yeah.
That's the branding that everyone else misses. Willie, I know you're doing well. You're going to crush it in this business because you're doing the process right.
Right.
You're branding yourself first. People forget that. They think that it takes too long. Of course it takes too long. Anything of value takes effort.
That's
okay,
right.
so phase 1, getting people on your list. How do you do that? Podcast, meetup group, boot camps around helping people to be able to know what to do with their money, social media posts, just adding value.
Yeah.
Putting out content in general.
Yeah.
That's the first phase. The second phase is a little bit more difficult. And you're like, wait, what you just said sounds like a lot, Adam. Right. So what's more difficult than that? What's more difficult than having a podcast and all this other stuff?
Yeah.
The second phase is managing your investors. What comes along with managing them is the software that you need.
Yeah.
It's the emails. How do you get them on your list properly so that you can stay in front of them?
Right.
And how do you continue to add value to them so that they don't go and chase some other influencer, someone else who's doing the right things?
Right.
Because they will. Think of passive investors as the grease.
Yep.
And think of the podcaster as the squeaky wheel.
Yep.
If you forget to be the squeaky wheel and stay in front of them, someone else is going to take your investors.
That's
okay.
Right.
So you've got to be able to manage it. You've got to, what we use, and write this down. I think this will be very helpful during the second phase, which is managing your investors. The main things that we need is we need active campaign.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, well, active campaign, super expensive. I can just use MailChimp. Sure, go ahead. Have fun trying to use MailChimp and have it do all the cool things that active campaign can do. It's not going to do the same stuff.
Right.
Another thing that we use is ClickFunnels, which gets the investors on the list. Like we use things like we call it a lead magnet. That's another way to say it. But basically, we give something of value where the passive investor says, I would like to be on your mailing list, and here's my email in exchange for that good thing, right?
Yep.
So now what else is part of of managing your investors? We've got to have something like we use, I'm trying to remember the name of it. My business partner does most of the managing of our investors. He's the tech whiz.
Is it
Zapier.
Appfolio?
Zapier.
Oh,
So we
Zapier.
use this thing called Zapier, which basically automatically takes this information and puts it where we want to go. And you're saying to yourself, or someone saying, why would I need like all of this stuff to manage investors? Well, if you're doing it wrong, you're going to have 2 or 3 investors, and you're going to be able to close on very small deals, and you're not going to be consistent. But if you do it the way I'm saying, you have a thought leadership platform, you're managing your investors, you're going to have hundreds of past investors that are begging to invest with you. Literally. We have 740 past investors that have anywhere from 50,000 to 3 million that are begging to be in the next deal.
Wow.
And you will too if you do it the right way, right? If you have all this prepared. If you go ready, aim, fire versus ready, fire, aim.
Right.
Now, so that's Active Campaign, that's Zapier, and then we use other things as well to kind of manage them.
Yeah.
Stay in front of them. What's the next step? The third phase? The third phase is calling for the capital. Yeah. The third phase is actually asking for money. And there's a few things that you got to think about in the third phase. We got to think, how do we get the people that are already on our investor list to show up to the webinar?
Right.
Like, sure, we've got them there, but how do we incentivize them to be on the webinar? Because you're not going to be able to raise capital if you can't get them onto your webinar. So it's, how do you do that? It's, what do you say on the webinar?
Yeah.
What do you talk about that a past investor wants to know? How do you show them that you're being conservative, like we talked about earlier? How do you show them that you've looked at all of the right things on that webinar?
Yep.
And how do you follow up with them after the webinar? So in the third phase, there's a little bit of human psychology, of persuasion, of influence, of showing that how fast these deals go, so that you can properly explain that on the webinar and on the follow-up calls after.
Right.
So if you're doing this right, phase 1 is branding and attracting passive investors to get on your list. Yep. Phase 2 is managing that list with the right tools. Phase 3 is calling and asking for the capital. And I don't know when the episode comes out. We have an annual Raising Money Summit, which on one of the days it talks about the first phase. On the second day, we talk about the second phase. And on the third day, we just talk about the third phase, which I think could be really helpful for somebody who wants to attract the most amount of capital, because we go into the nitty-gritty of what to say, how to say it, what software to use. We even teach you how to use it. So that'll be my call to action for the people listening. If they do want to be able to attract massive amounts of capital, I'm talking having hundreds of investors on your list instead of 2. Yep. Then Raising Money Summit, raisingmoneysummit.com is a good way to get it.
Yeah. I'll be sure to include it in the show notes. And what's the date of that event?
October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. 1st through 4th, a 4-day intensive, and that's for 2020 is October 1st through 4th. But it's an annual conference, and it's always the first weekend of October.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's pretty sweet, man. And you laid out some really good tips to start raising money, build your brand, manage your investors, and then get them to commit. Once you find a deal.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's pretty awesome. Now, as far as the software are you using something like Appfolio, or do you recommend a platform like that to get the soft commitments ahead of time?
I recommend that we do the soft commitments ourselves, and so here's how that part of the process goes. Just remember, we're getting in front of our investors, phase 1. And we use what's called a lead magnet, which gets them to, that's the first time that they join your initial email list. It's not the last time yet. Remember that they're going to join 2 different email lists. They're going to join your general email list, And then as you qualify that investor and you do a phone call with them or go to lunch with them, and you show them the type of deals, you're going to start getting pre-commitments just by communicating with them, and you're taking really good notes. You ask them things like, you say, how much experience do you have? How much money's in the bank? How much money are you making? And even though those are awkward for some people, like people don't like to talk about money really that much, but you got to explain when you get into this meeting with your past investor, you got to explain, look, it's securities and exchange rules that I know these things about you before I ever let you invest. If you're not qualified, I can't take your money legally. And so now the investor understands, all right, number one, they feel like they need to prove themselves to you in a way, right? Because it's almost like, oh, you're qualifying me, and they want to show you what they've done. Yeah. But the real most important part is that if you know that they have lots of experience investing in different things, that they understand that there's risks involved with any type of syndication. You can't control the weather, you can't control hail or earthquakes, you can't control, there's a lot of things that are completely out of our control. You can't really control the global economy, right? When they understand that there are some risks involved, and then they show you that they've done it, and they show you how much money they've got in the bank and how much they'd be willing to put in. Now is when you start to get pre-commitments. And here's how you do it. You say to that investor, you say, hey, Willie, after having a conversation with you, it does sound like you'd qualify to be able to place anywhere from 50 to 100,000, which is great. What I need to know from you is how much you plan to put in and how fast you'd be able to move. And here's why I'm asking you that, Willie. It's because if I put out a deal and I think that you're going to invest in it, and I take your commitment later on and you say, I'm going to do 50 or 100 grand, and then you back out, we're not going to be able to close that deal. We're not going to be able to move fast enough. So it takes a couple of weeks to get the money in, and once it's all in, it's all ready to close. And so I need to get a commitment from you if you're ready for that. Are you ready to move within 2 weeks? And if so, do you want to do 50 or 100? And then they say, I want to do 100. And you say, look, are you seriously going to put 100 into this deal? Or are you looking at a whole bunch of other deals? Or you might have to pay for your son's wedding, or you might have to buy a new house, and that was your down payment. Like, I need to know if you're all the way in or all the way out. If you're not all the way sure, just tell me you're not sure, and I'll let somebody else take your spot.
Right.
But if you are all the way sure, I'm going to hold this spot, you're saying you're going to do 100. When that happens, it needs to be moved within 2 weeks, because these deals go fast.
Right.
And so now they're prepared and they've committed to you. You've said it basically 3 times in 3 different ways. Are you absolutely sure?
Right.
That's how I get pre-commitments, not with some Appfolio thing. Yeah. With expressing how important this is and what the consequences are. And here's the main consequence. If you aren't all the way in, then I'm going to let somebody else take that spot. If you're not all the way in, then you're all the way out and not even going to work with you. Once they see that, human psychology, fear of missing out, people call it FOMO.
Yeah.
The passive investor is going to be like, man, this is serious.
Right.
I'm really committing, and if I don't, I'm not going to be able to make that kind of money on my money. The passive investor, they're the smartest people in this world for a few reasons, but mostly because they're leveraging OPT.
Yeah.
And if they're going to commit all the way to your face 3 times in that conversation, then they're ready to go. And we said this before, you want to raise a little over twice as much as the 30% of the properties you're looking at.
Yeah.
So you want to get these pre-commitments. Let's just pretend as though I want to buy a $10 million property.
Yeah.
Round numbers. And so I'm going to raise $3 million per property. So I want to be talking to so many investors that I've got 6 million of people saying, yes, I can move that fast. Yes, it's going to be 100 or 50 or 200,000. And yes, I'm going to be able to do it within 2 weeks.
Right.
I want to get 6 million of that. Now I can start looking at $10 million properties.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. And I'm guessing the reason why you're saying get commitments on, double what you need is because people just going to back out. It's just going to happen. You're going to have a certain percentage to back out.
Yeah. And even if you don't have them back out, if you do everything like I say, it's foolproof.
Right.
If you listen to this entire podcast, how to get educated, find a market, build a team, get the property manager, raise the money with the 3 phases of raising money, and then look for deals, it will be foolproof. It's not just because some of them will probably back out. Yeah. It's also because you need to oversubscribe on your first deal. I cannot explain how important it is. You must, quote, oversubscribe, which means that you've got to have a few investors that wanted to do the deal, but they only moved at 2.5 weeks. Not 2. They moved at 2.5 weeks speed.
Yeah.
And they missed out on the property. Now they feel bad. Now they're like, man, when Willie gets a deal, he actually does close it. He actually does cut it off in 2 weeks.
Right.
Instead of you telling them that it's fast and you only get the regular commitment and you're still begging for money, chasing after money 3, 4, 5 weeks later. If you follow my process, people will be begging to get into your deals. They'll be eager. They'll be moving as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Because they know that these deals actually, because you have integrity, they actually go fast.
Right.
But it's more than just some of them are going to back out, and you have to oversubscribe on every deal. So far, we've oversubscribed on every deal, and it's a good feeling to tell our investors that we always oversubscribe. Yeah. We always oversubscribe because we always raise too much money, and you have to move fast if you want to be one of the few select people. And the few select, the human psychology to that is it's scarcity.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to, these things go so fast that I want to be one of the few that can make this kind of money on my money with Willie.
Right.
And so that scarcity allows people to be able to move even faster. So.
Awesome. No, that's some really good points, man, and I'm pretty sure the listeners got a lot out of that. Let's go ahead and segue to the last segment of the show. It's our lightning round. 6 questions for you.
Okay.
All right. First one is, what's the best advice you ever been given?
Best advice I've ever been given was from junior high school. We read this quote by Calvin Coolidge about persistence and determination are omnipotent, meaning if you never, ever, ever quit, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, if you're relentless, you will achieve everything. My band director, of all people, had me memorize that quote, and he told me, if you never quit, you'll have anything in this world that you want. Best advice I've ever had.
Yeah, that's great advice. What's the best book you've read in the last 12 months?
In the last 12 months, there have been 47 books that I've read in the last 12 months.
Wow.
The best one is always the one that I'm reading now, which is funny. So it's Your Money or Your Life.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that Your Money or Your Life, this is the new version of it. It's an old book. It's been around for a long time. And what they're doing in there is just showing that you don't need a bunch of crap. You don't need the newest iPhone. You don't need a brand new car. You don't need to have a logo on your shirt. You don't need to have custom glasses. You don't need all this crap.
Yeah.
All it does is it ruins the environment. All it does is you never achieve happiness through material things. And so the book kind of just flips your world upside down and lets you know that if you start living below your means honestly and investing your money into things like apartments and stocks and other things, like gradually over time, you're going to achieve a greatness that you never could have achieved if you were making a dying, they call it. Instead of making a living, it's making a dying, because what they're saying in that book is every step that you take to buy that new iPhone, to buy the brand new AirPods because they're a little bit better than the old version of AirPods, to have 3 monitors instead of 2 monitors, all it does is it kills you. It kills you one day at a time. It doesn't make you happier. And so there's another way of thinking, and it's really opening my mind to something, and it's making me feel bad that I bought a brand new car, like a 2020 vehicle last year. It's just making me understand that there is a different way to do it, and I could have bought a different vehicle. I didn't need brand new whatever. I don't need the next version. So it's kind of interesting.
No, that's seems like a good book. I'm gonna have to check it out. What are some rituals you're doing right now that's making you a better investor or a person in general?
Two things. Three. Okay. One is exercise. I'm going on bike rides, and I hiked a 14er 2 days ago, 14,000 feet in the air, a mountain, and mountain biking, exercising, eating right. That's the first one, is caring about my health.
Yep.
And I think that makes me a better person. The second one is practicing gratitude, which in the mornings, in the night, and any time that I'm upset or stressed, I take a step back and I basically pray, for lack of a better term. I basically sit there and express the things that I'm grateful for, and it changes the molecular structure of my body and my brain, and it helps me see things in the right light, not when you're weeded and clouded. So practicing gratitude. And the third one that I was going to share is being on podcasts like this. This is a habit. This is something I do often. Whenever someone invites me, I take the opportunity to try to give back. And it makes me feel amazing every time I do that. I feel like I'm helping the world, even if they just noticed one small thing that we shared about. And so taking the opportunity to be on there. And it also helps raise more money for our properties. It also helps me speak at more conferences. It does so much for me as a person to be on a podcast like this today. So those are the 3 things that I thought I'd share.
Awesome. What is the one thing you're focusing on right now to help you improve your business?
Managing my team.
Yeah.
Not really building the team today, but managing the team that I have. There's 13 people in my apartment investing company. Yeah. And just empowering them, strengthening them, helping them learn. And I also have 5 virtual assistants. 4 of them are in the Philippines. One's in India. Yeah. And I focus a lot on just empowering the team, letting them learn new things, letting them grow as people, as real estate investors. And I believe that this is something that's going to pay massive dividends in the future. It's just focusing on the team right now.
Right. No, I think that's a very good deal you're doing, man. All right, here you go. If you can give your younger self one tip in regards to investing, what would that be?
I would have tried to explain to myself that how easy it can be to mismanage your own property. At the time, I thought that I knew everything about managing properties because I'd managed 23 for a year and I made this owner $1 million.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize is that when I had someone come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to be late on my rent, or I can't pay rent on the 1st or the 5th."
Yep.
The truth is, I wish that I would have been more of a hard A. I wish I would have been more selfish.
Right.
And I thought that I was being a good person by letting them be late, by letting them walk all over me. I thought that that was the right way to approach it.
Yep.
But the real right way to approach it is to have systems and processes in place. If you're late on the 5th, you're getting an eviction notice. 3 days, you either pay or leave.
Yeah.
And I just felt so bad. My heart wouldn't accept that.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of years to understand that either I have to be that way, or I have to have a good property manager who's willing to be that way. And that was the whole reason why I lost my apartment community, my first one in 2011, the one that I bought in 2008, is because I wasn't willing to stand up for myself. I wasn't willing to follow processes and procedures. And I kind of just did it wrong.
Yeah.
And that really hurt me. And I'm glad that I've learned that. But if I could just tell myself something, I would have said, you got to find a way to uphold the expectation. You've got to find a way to do that. Even if it hurts your heart, you've got to find a way to have that accountability to your tenants, your residents.
Yeah. No, that's that's a good lesson that you learn. Obviously you have managers in place now, so you don't have to deal with the people pulling the heartstrings.
Yes.
So that's good, man. That's good. Last question for you. What's the worst job you ever had?
None of them were the worst job. The hardest job was working with my dad as a landscaping person outside in 100-degree heat.
Yeah.
That was one of the hardest ones I've ever had. Burger King was, I flipped burgers and I ran the drive-through. That was, not glamorous, but it was a job, and I was putting food on the table, and it was important.
Yeah.
So no job was the worst job.
Yeah.
But they all have their pros. They all have their cons. Right now, as an influencer, if I say anything wrong ever, it will be out there and it will come back to haunt me.
Yeah.
But I love it too. So there's pros and cons everywhere. And I think if we think of our jobs as the worst job, I think we won't appreciate it like that, practicing gratitude. So none of them.
That's great, man. Good for you, man. Good for you. All right, AAA, man, we at the end of the show here. Tell my listeners, how can they get in touch with you?
Perfect. Probably the best way is if they want help raising private capital, they can go to raisingmoneycoach.com, or they can come hang out with us at the Raising Money Summit, and they find that by going raisingmoneysummit.com.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on the show today, man. You added a ton of value.
Thank you, Willie. I'm grateful to be.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Generational Wealth Through Commercial Real Estate podcast, brought to you by Onyx Capital Investments. Onyx Capital Investments works with investors nationwide to invest in income-producing real estate in emerging markets. Connect online at www.onyxcapitalinvestments.com to learn more about what we're doing. If we have added value to your life, please leave us a review.